And we are back with 2026, first episode of Cloud Dialogues for the year. Hey, Georgia, how you doing on this fine Monday?
Good. We're
Good.
here. We made it.
Late for you, early for me. Yeah. We have 3 time zones. We have a Melbourne, we have a London, and we have a Texas because we have a special guest, Allen Helton. Hello.
Hey, Happy New Year.
Yes, it is Happy New Year. That is true. You can say that up until the end of January. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
In February, it starts getting a bit old. And do you want to just give a brief intro on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Allen Helton. I'm an ecosystem engineer at Memento. I'm also an AWS Hero and a farmer. I think that's probably the most interesting thing about me is that I have a farm. In fact, 10 minutes ago, before we got on this call, I actually just got back from Tractor Supply, picking up hay and chicken feed.
Nice.
What do you have a
So
farm?
are they?
I have goats and chickens and turkeys and geese and cats and dogs.
Oh, I love goats.
I wasn't
Yes.
sure if they were ducks or geese, but I guess they're
Ducks.
all related.
Are they
I had
different?
ducks for a while. They're dirty. They're messy.
Oh, really?
They're so
though.
cute though, and they like walk around in a line. Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
Beatrix Potter.
That's right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Thanks for joining. Oh, and for those who don't know Memento, what do they do?
We do hyperscale caching. That's the biggest thing that we do. We do a whole bunch of different stuff, but the bread and butter is enterprise grade caching at the millions and millions of RPS scale.
Yeah, with super low latency usually to get that data. And there's a lot of data around. We'll talk about data today a little bit because we're going to talk about the operational state of AI and cloud. Things have changed immensely over the past year, I feel. And they've changed immensely over the last 2 to 3 years. They always seem to change, but I think the rate of change has been quicker, I think, especially in the last year. I feel like this year was like 7 or something with all the releases and changes and everything. We'll talk a bit of that, but first we'll talk a bit about what's changed, and we'll also talk about what our predictions of what's going to happen this year. Because it's always good to start the year off with predictions. At least half of
We
them
can
will be
test
correct, surely.
ourselves. Come back to them at the end
That's
of the
right, we can
year and
test
say, were we wrong?
That's a good idea.
No, let's not do that.
And
I don't like accountability.
we probably are. That's right. So we'll talk about some quick news articles that we found that were interesting. I'm going to start with GPT Health. I think some people got a bit, I don't know, people are using LLMs for a lot of different use cases, and I think health is one of them. Dr. GPT. People use Google for it, right?
I would like to talk about this.
People use Google, right? Back in the day, Dr. Google to
Self out.
and that can be partially accurate and partially not.
What is it?
depending on
WebMD?
what the problem
WebMD
is.
was that?
Oh,
What it was. I
WebMD.
was like,
I think that still exists.
me and Bobby are always all
Yeah.
over WebMD. It's really bad. Don't do that.
So it's and you always get the worst of the worst when you're looking at that
You
sort of
have
stuff
cancer.
up. At least in my experience. Yeah, that's right. Everything leads
Every
to
day.
cancer. GPT Health is actually probably, I don't know, I think it's a good thing having a special area for that, although I haven't used it. So I'm just curious as to, especially Georgia, your thoughts on this.
To be honest, I don't really give this. I find it odd product positioning. Like, what are we saying? How are we saying it's different from just using ChatGPT and dumping all your health data in there, or not? Like, I can say, as someone, I had surgery in December. I used ChatGPT a lot to inform my aftercare because the medical profession is just absolutely hopeless. And it was really helpful and gave me lots of insight on things that, as someone that's had the same surgery previously, I didn't know. Yeah, really useful. I don't really understand the position of this product, but maybe it's one of those like willing to be misunderstood for a while. I don't really get it. Look at it. I'm like, why? Is this just a disclaimer thing?
It's
Like,
a
I don't understand
it's an
it.
extra
Yeah,
button.
I don't understand.
It's an
I don't understand. I think let's let the passage of time do most of the work, Matt.
Yeah, you know what I think it's just a place to help people put all their stuff. It's a little bit concerning if people are putting all their personal medical information, uploading it to OpenAI, because what are they actually going to do with all this
But I
data?
mean, are they acting themselves? Because if they're not, then why do we care? If you're not identifying
Yeah.
yourself, then what does it matter if your health data is going, unless you have a 1 in a billion disease? I think it's pretty unlikely that they're going to identify you unless you are providing your personal data, right?
I'm guessing a lot of people are. Like
Yeah.
if I was to guess, a lot of people are just uploading lab reports to ChatGPT
Yeah,
and
that
says
and
this.
that's when you start getting to, do we really want to be? And I actually had this situation today because my doctor gave me a report and there was some stuff in there that she didn't know what the answer to it was. So I was like, I'm actually going to just ask ChatGPT, but I didn't upload the report. I literally just copied the little what the report said and said,
The
like, what does
important
this
stuff.
mean? Or can you do? Yeah, I agree. I think I would definitely say to people, I wouldn't upload documents or dump. It's like putting client data into these models, right?
pretty
Like, don't
much.
do that because there is a chance it could spit that out to somebody else. It's unlikely, but it's possible.
Yes. All right. Next article. AWS, interestingly enough, over the last few years, people have complained AWS hasn't grown. It's still making billions of dollars every quarter, but the growth wasn't there. And it seems like the last quarter, or the third, they've delivered 20% year-on-year expansion, which is the highest growth rate in 11 quarters. So I think the growth rate was declining, but all of a sudden it's high again. I wonder if AI has got something to do
You
with
would
that.
think, right? Do you not feel like they caught up a bit on where they were originally behind on the AI? Because that's why they fired the CEO, wasn't it? Is it Adam? That's why they got rid of Adam, because they felt like he was behind on AI. Was that not the guy's name? You guys are staring at me blank.
No, it was.
I didn't want to.
No, Adam, isn't it Adam Salipsky?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
You should know
Sorry,
this
I
more than
forgot.
I do. Why do I care?
He wasn't. Yeah, I know. That's true. So, yeah, and they were behind, yes, because they were, I think everyone took them by surprise.
Yeah.
But I think they've made up a lot of
Yeah.
ground with their platform in Bedrock, and especially hosting Claude. Like, if it was just all their models, I don't think anyone would care.
Totally.
But hosting Claude is totally key to their success because it allows people to stay within the AWS ecosystem. There are the open source models which have use cases, and the AWS models are obviously getting better, and they've got the sonic voice and a few other bits and pieces which are improving as well. And they're good at summarization, I think, and they're best in the for all the cloud providers for hosting Claude outside of Anthropic, because they've got it pretty much around the world, whereas the other providers, I think Azure only just got Claude from a couple of months ago, and it's in limited regions, especially in Google. And we have Claude in Australia, which is good from a
regulatory
data sovereignty
perspective. Yeah.
So they're using their scale in a good way to make this stuff available, and obviously that's got a huge impact onto their bottom. I don't think they get much from Anthropic, especially, but they've got that deal with Anthropic.
They part own Anthropic,
they'll be
don't
getting
they? So
something.
they would be seeing part of that revenue stream. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. That AI, that growth. I didn't realize that until I was doing the research for this show. Next article is around IBM. We don't talk about IBM much here, but they've put out a tech trends predictions, and one of their predictions is that they've been talking about quantum computers for a long time, probably almost 10 years now, and they reckon that it will outperform a classical computer this year. So it should be able to solve a problem better than all classical only methods, which is interesting. They don't put much detail around that, but this is one I do want to revisit later on. And I do want to get someone who knows quantum, because I think that'd be an interesting show, because it is something that's probably going to come out. I know there are regulatory changes happening in governments around the world, especially around banking security, because there could be a time when all the algorithms, that haven't been broken, maybe that's going to change the game a little bit. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. Have you done much with the quantum, Alan?
No, I don't understand it. I, I hear it and I'm like, I can't. I don't have enough mental. Oh,
The only thing I know is that rather than having zero and ones, you have lots of things in between. So there's a lot of different states. So in theory, it could deal with more information at once. So anyway, we need someone who knows what they're talking about to tell me I'm wrong, I think.
this article I think was interesting, not from what they said, but from what they didn't say. I've been seeing a lot of predictions from other big companies about the size of IBM. They're talking a lot about running AI on the edge, like really moving away from LLMs to SLMs, small language models, and
Yes.
making those capable of running at points of presence or just like really close or even on machine for the use of robotics and bringing it into the physical world. Because you can't have that latency of going all the way back and then having a large language model process to a very small set of instructions to do stuff. And I don't see that at all in the predictions from IBM, and I'm surprised. It's a lot of agents, a lot of multimodal AI, agent to agent communication, but not so much narrowing the scope.
Yeah, that edge stuff's important because the latency is insane right at the moment.
That was in my predictions for 2026. I did the Capgemini media briefing, and I spoke about how, I guess we're going to speak a little bit about it today, but I spoke about how we can't anymore consider we've got all these separate, like maybe we've got cloud, maybe we've got on-premise, maybe we've got edge, all these sovereign cloud. It has to be a cohesive ecosystem instead of being like all these separate things. Like that's kind of similar to what you were just saying there, is if we need to deploy models, we really need to get to a point where we can do that on the edge, especially depending on where we're operating. You consider defense as an example. They're potentially operating in areas where they won't have great connectivity, or even sports. Like Formula One is a great example of this as well. A lot of the time they don't have good connectivity. They have to run things on the edge. I think we're definitely moving in that direction. It'll be interesting to see how far it goes, because especially given the large scale, I would say, adoption of LLMs as opposed to, say, smaller language models.
Yeah, the edge is the new platform.
Yep.
A lot of the time.
Yep.
So the last article I have here, I think, Georgie, did you put this one on?
What's it about power?
I can't remember if it was you or me. Yes. Google says the US transmission system is the biggest challenge for connecting data centers. We've talked about this before.
I know. I just wanted to, obviously, we did an episode a couple of months back before the end of last year about power supply and renewables. And I think it's just like more symptoms of the same problem happening globally, right? Like it's not it's a global problem. It's not a US problem. It's an everywhere problem, is that we don't have enough power to power the data centers with AI. So I just thought that was another interesting signal, is like Google's.
And I think we're going to hear more.
Renewables has to be the answer, right?
More, yes. Yeah, that'll be part of the
They're not going to be able to use
also
the core power. They're not going to be able to use core power networks. It's going to be too much of a risk.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're going to hear more about this year. It's probably going into the predictions, but is it sustainable, everything that's happening now, and just chewing up all that power?
But it has to be renewable,
I mean,
right?
chips are getting more efficient.
It has to be renewable. I do think we'll reach a point of saturation. I don't think we're near there yet, though. I think that's going to be driven by enterprise adoption. And enterprise adoption, my views, enterprise adoption is still very low.
Yeah. We'll see. I think it'll be interesting. And if Google's seeing it, AWS
I mean, they're all
will be seeing
complaining
it as
or
well.
like they're all, yeah. Renewables has to be the answer. Like, they're going to have to sort it out themselves. The power networks and the regulators, they're not going to fix this problem. The innovation has to come from the private sector. That's just life.
Yeah.
You know, private sector.
Yeah. I thought Google were one of the cleanest, but I'm not sure. I'm just trying to find
Probably.
the reference.
Well, they've got to
Yeah.
do it right. If they don't power their own data
Yeah.
centers, they're not going to have data centers.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. All right. Enough of the news. Let's talk about AI.
Wow.
Where do we want to start? I think we started this podcast talking about cloud topics and making those topics available to a couple of years back to the wider executive community, because there's a lot of misinformation and all different types of topics that we try to break down and explain. And now everyone's wanting to use AI, but the cloud foundations a lot of the time, I don't know, let's say rocky. Georgia and I are consultants, so we see things. You probably hear things, Alan. Actually, you probably deal with customers, don't you? So you probably see a few things as well.
Yeah, some, not quite as many as you guys do.
Yeah. And you live like in a pretty much a cloud environment for everything, and it's probably a pretty solid one.
Yep.
You'll have customers who maybe have possibly playing catch up to be able to consume your product effectively.
And no doubt, for most of my career, I worked in public sector, specifically in governments. And that was, so I've seen that most of my career has been dealing with that, mainframes and convincing people. Yeah.
And that's one of the problems, because government are a lot of the time, very behind, and they like to outsource things. And when you outsource things like that, you lack the innovation. So it's I guess you think you're outsourcing something to save time, but in actual fact, things like that are moving innovation quickly are not usually a good thing to outsource.
But I think it's the same with AI. If your teams don't really, it's the same with cloud, right? I think we're seeing a lot of the same waves, AI, as we were with cloud. Is if your teams, as in your business, I'm not talking about IT, I'm not talking about some outsourced team that does service desk, I'm talking about teams that deliver your business, whatever your product is, right? Whether you're public, private, if they don't actually understand the capability of technology, whether it's cloud, whether it's AI, whether it's ML, whatever, they're not going to be able to do anything with it, right? Nothing. Zilch. Nada. If they don't get it, they're not going to, you're not going to be able to use it, right? And it's just the same thing as we saw with cloud. You have to have the business immersed in it. And if they're not, then you won't see the benefits.
And education is a big piece, right? Because it's education and also having your data ready. We've talked about that before, where to get the best out of AI, you've got to have your data available and not siloed. Because as we found when ChatGPT came out, you start doing stuff with that, and if it doesn't have a full context over your environment, it just spits out rubbish because it doesn't know you, it doesn't know your context. And that's a problem that is probably less so now, but it's still there. Like, even when you're developing, it can hallucinate APIs if you haven't given it the full context of what you want to do. Even people say that problem's gone away, but it hasn't. It is still there, but it's less of an issue.
The other day I checked something and ChatGPT was hallucinating at me, but I could tell, and it wasn't something important. I was just like jabbering away. No, I think one of the things we spoke about a couple of weeks ago was like a year of truth for AI. Like, at the moment, a lot of organizations are saying, we spent all this money, but we actually haven't seen any return. And I think that's a reflection of what you just spoken about there, Matt, is that for a lot of organizations, it's been 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And that might be like, oh, we've gone to implement AI initiatives. We've executed it with our own data. Oh, we've realized our data is actually somewhat unusable. We've had to take a step back, resolve the data issue. Unfortunately, AI is not going to solve your data governance problems. It will help, but it's not a silver bullet to solving your data governance problems. You still have to get data somewhere where it's usable and have it in some sort of format that models can reasonably use. And if it's not, then that's what that's a reflection of a lot of organizations bumping into that. They've tried to do things, which is great, which is important, right? But the foundation layer wasn't there to begin with.
Yeah, and people did a lot of pilots with AI in the last couple of years. Do you think the day of pilots is gone, and now people are actually wanting some business value out of this stuff? What do you think, Alan?
No, I don't think they're gone. And the reason I don't think that is, like, when we were at reInvent last month, it was very obvious that there is an AI bubble, or there is a bubble of people that are at the front of it or use it every day, let's just call them power users of AI. And then there's the rest of tech that doesn't use it at all. They're just, it's the standard adoption curve, right? I think a lot of the people, like the three of us, were talking about it like it's yesterday's news. Obviously, we were early adopters of it, but I feel like there's a majority of tech out there that is still about to climb that adoption curve that is going to be ready for pilots. And honestly, it's a really good time for that because we have more answers than we ever did when it comes to the pilot phase.
Yeah. The problem with pilots a couple of years ago is that a lot of them probably didn't progress very far because the tech hadn't really caught up. The models weren't great. There was no way to get external information in. Like the only way to bring external information was prompt engineering and multi-shot prompts with all this sample data.
Now we have MCP.
Fine-tuning. Yeah, MCPs and skills. There's all these different... I feel like they're bolting on a whole lot of tech onto LLMs, and it's actually becoming way more complex, which might be scaring people off as well. But I don't know. I think
it is becoming complex, but it's also, I can't say everything is, but a lot of it are necessary pieces. You have guardrails that go on the inputs and the outputs. You have meta agents that you could just tack on now to do extra review. There's a whole bunch of different stuff that's really necessary for enterprise adoption that makes it a lot harder than when the early adopters were saying, hey, look what I built, because we were just passing in plain text and returning plain text and it was working. Yeah. Now there's a lot more real pieces that are involved. It do make it harder, but it does make it production ready.
Yeah. And about when you were saying before the adoption curve, I'm still meeting devs who didn't want to touch it. And then as soon as they touch it, they've got that aha moment and they're like, because I think they were burnt. I think a lot of people were burnt with bad code, and we all know we've all had those bad experiences. Mm-hmm. But even now, developers are realizing, oh, well, this is interesting. It actually works. Is it perfect? No. But does it
neither
solve 80%
are humans.
Of the problem? Absolutely. That's the problem.
It's like
it writes better code than
AI is unethical. Are you saying that humans are more ethical than AI? I would fundamentally question that. Right? I agree we should do a due diligence.
We could do a whole show on that.
Let's not be frightened of innovating because we're worried about. Let's do a due diligence and get it done.
Do you still find, Georgia, are you still finding people like day to day that don't use AI?
Oh my God, yes. Yes. People that are like, oh, I never get anything good from it. I'm like, yeah, because you need to learn to prompt. If you can't, I'm like, just quietly, I'm concerned about your career.
That's right. That's a good point, actually.
Honestly, it's not rocket science.
Yeah. It's just practice, like anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes, even today, I'll still prompt poorly because sometimes I might be lazy. And then I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Let me refine that a little bit.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting problems, how are we going to hire devs going forward?
I'm going to let you guys answer this.
I don't know. This is an interesting problem because I think the hiring process has been, I don't know, I'd say it's very variable between companies, and obviously lead code a lot of people that study leak code, which is basically studying algorithm. For those who don't know what leak code is, it's like studying algorithms and being able to write code to solve particular problems in an interview, because interviewers liked to ask those problems. Are they the interview questions that are going to matter going forward, or are we going to change the game a little bit to be more actual useful, practical engineering type questions on how you tackle a problem and how you use an LLM to solve the problem? What do you think, Alan?
This is a hard one for me to answer because it's been a while since I graduated college, and it's been a while since I've thought at that kind of associate level, because I look at it now and I've been a hiring manager all the way from associate all the way up to tech lead, and the questions that I ask are very different. But with AI, I actually said this to someone the other day. Programming language really has never mattered less, because it doesn't really, because if you're using the tools appropriately, you can just ask, build me this, but write it in Java, or build me this, write it in .NET. And the big thing that I would look for if I was a hiring manager again would be the comprehension, which is what I've always looked for. Do you understand these things? But I think it would shift for people that asked historically, write me something that does this. It'd be more of a look at this code and tell me what it does, because that's what I find myself doing a lot more these days, as opposed to actually writing it. It's reviewing what AI has generated for me. And I think that's probably the skill it's going to be more valuable in even 1 year's time, is do you understand what you're looking at and what are the downstream effects if you do things that way? But yeah, I don't really see a lot of value anymore in write me something that does this, because you can have it as quickly as you can say it these days.
That's right, exactly. Even in the past, there was libraries to do everything anyway. And would you really rewrite that stuff? Probably not. There are those crazies that do, but in general, yeah, code is now a solved problem. We don't have to worry about it.
But I think also
Structure and stuff.
fundamentally, the question is, can you reason effectively? Which means that the tools are null. Yes, everything's on steroids because it will move faster because we have all these tools. But fundamentally, like, why would you need to take them away in an assessment context if you're assessing how someone thinks? Like, to me, it doesn't make any difference. It's like you're asking for an outcome. You want to understand if someone can reason effectively from a developer perspective. The tools are, it's the same as assessing university students, right? Like, you can't use AI to write an essay. Why not? If it's factual and it makes sense, and it's, again, we're comparing apples with apples, you're comparing students to each other or junior developers with junior developers, what do the tools matter? It's always
and the skills around that, probably more than it. And you've got to know the limitations of the language models too. So if you give, so I did this last week. So if I experimented with some tech, it was in AWS, but it doesn't really matter. I'd written out a whole bunch of stuff. In the past, I would have had to spend an afternoon restructuring that for a blog post, but I could give that to AI, give it my style. It knows my writing style. Please come up with a blog post that covers this whole thing. And then you go through and edit it. And it basically looks like you pretty much wrote it, but it's done all the heavy lifting and structured everything in the right order. You just have to go through and remove the obvious LLM things, which is a skill in itself, because if you've seen enough of it, you know how they write, and it gets it probably 80% there. I just have to spend half an hour doing an edit myself on what it's done, and it looks like I wrote it, and it's a valuable asset for someone to read because it's practical advice.
I get really frustrated by that whole conversation that this was AI written. It's who gives a shit? Is it factually accurate? Is it an actual reflection of the person that's written it? If it is, then why do we care if it was written by AI or it was tidied up by AI or whatever? And I also just feel like that's a bit discriminatory. It's like, why are we worried about this? Honestly.
Yeah.
Same thing, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different skills. And also on that topic around hiring, I was on a panel last week and I had a discussion with some almost finished university students, and they were asking me and this other guy for advice on what they should. Are their skills still relevant? How can they learn if AI? And these are all topical questions, right? Because we're at a turning point where we don't know what's going to happen. And yes, a lot of the skills they learn might not be relevant, but I think having a basic understanding and being able to build things you will still need, because sometimes LLMs do get stuck in a bit of a rut, and you still need to know how things work. Otherwise you might end up with a mess. But in the next couple of years that might not matter as much. But I think even now you still need to have a basic understanding of that stuff. You still use AI. My advice was use AI to fill your knowledge gaps. Understand what it's telling you. If you don't understand what it's telling you, ask it to explain it to you. And I think having AI helps. It's like a superpower, and it'll help you learn things quicker, because you don't have to, you can ask the silly questions of the AI rather than, you can still ask people because you get different responses, but a lot of the time you don't have anyone to ask. You need that answer now. I don't know. What about, what would your advice be to university students? And I think it's different, right? If someone's finishing university now to someone starting university now, right? Maybe. Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on that, Alan?
Yeah, I read a blog post a couple months ago where the main point of it was making a case saying that the use of AI tools has made everybody need to be a tech lead. For anybody that's been a tech lead, it's a lot about systems design and not necessarily looking at them on a farm, right? So the pile of lumber in front of you, but the barn and the blueprints that you have that lumber will turn into. And typically when I associate people straight out of college, I think they're the ones that go in and take the lumber and hammer the nails and whatever it is and do that work. But AI is doing that now. And so really what you need is that vision to be able to turn something into a greater system, or greater than the sum of its parts, if you will. And so tracing that back to the question, what would I tell somebody that's in college is it's never really been more important to understand how it all works, how the pieces work. It's not necessarily important, I'm going to regret saying this, but it's not necessarily important to understand how a for loop works, because AI will write that for you. For anyone that's listening that is in college, do learn how a for loop looks, but you still need to understand that everything that you write is part of something bigger, and understanding how it plays into that bigger thing is incredibly important, even coming straight out of college. I think because the expectations are changing.
Yeah. And it's never been more important, because you're going to get to that point faster.
I feel like that's harder for young people now, is because they're coming in and they have to know like almost how it all works. And then of course there's all these people that have been doing it for 20 years. They really understand how it all works. I just feel like the gap scares me a little bit. Like I think it's fine, but I feel empathy for people that are early in their careers right now.
Because normally you have to go 20 years to get all that experience to be able to maybe not 20, 10 to 15, 20 years to get that experience to know how things work, because you worked in all different areas. I did sysadmin.
Yeah.
I never really worked as a dev. I did scripts and stuff over the years, but now you not need to know all that to be effective using AI, but AI can help you learn that quickly.
I think being able through problems is super important. And just also being willing to, one of the things I feel like is really difficult to find is people that will try to do something that they haven't done before. Like, why is it so difficult to find people that will just try and do it? It's that I feel is a super important attribute. It's like we don't all know the answers, but we do need to get things done.
That's right. That's true. One interesting thing that I don't know, I've got this interesting question. How would we cope if the models were taken away tomorrow? You know how, I don't think it's going to happen, right? Because if there's only one model provider, that would be a huge risk. But because there's multiple, and they're all pretty much relatively, give or take, they have the same capabilities. But what if they just ramped up the prices and they're trying to, all these max plans, the plans that they have, they're lost leaders from what everyone can tell, right? Are costs going to increase, or are the models going to get more efficient and there'll be some sort of balancing? What do you guys think?
Well, in that question, I think it will continue to ride a balance. I think there's not really a metric, but there's like a cost to reasoning balance. I think that's, for me, hopefully will grow linearly with all the real talk that's in the world right now. Where can you buy RAM for a reasonable cost, or all this other stuff where it's driving the cost of all these things up? I don't know. Taking a couple steps back to another question that you asked, what would happen if they weren't available for one reason or another? And I think this really tracks back to the question we were just having, which is the advice for college students. I think there is a very small set of people in the industry right now that would just be completely out of luck because their entire careers has had this available, coding agents and whatever, and they haven't, there's an American phrase, I don't know, it'll hit for everybody else, but have had their nose in the dirt long enough where you have those hard-earned battles. One, you rage quit, and then you learn why things happened. If the models suddenly weren't available, you don't have any of those experiences yet. And who knows what would happen? Like, I think it would feel systemically across all of tech, everything comes to a screeching halt because productivity goes way down. You'll still likely be productive to some capacity, but not as productive as it is now.
Yeah. Like a week to ship a feature instead of an afternoon. Like that's the biggest change for me. Like being able to get something done efficiently in an afternoon, fully tested, that would take, when you're going in and out of coding, for those who's not a developer, you lose the context, and every time you come back, you've got to remember where you were, what you were doing, where you're up to. Whereas now you can just do a prompt and in 5 minutes you're up to speed of where you were and what you need to do. So it's those absolutely productivity. You'd lose all that productivity. But models, I suspect the models won't be taken away because there's so much potential money in it, and people are getting more reliant on it. But it's interesting. I don't know where it's going to head this year. Obviously, the models will get better. Will they get more efficient? Will they get more reliable? Like they're always down. Like Claude's down every other week. I'm not sure about ChatGPT and Gemini, but I don't use them as much. But reliability will become an issue too, I think, even if they don't take them away.
I think it's like any other part of your stack that might potentially be a risk, right? Yeah. It's not really any different.
No, that's true. And AWS goes away. It does go away occasionally. There was a big outage last year. But it doesn't happen every year. So I think as, say, more and more people are using AI, more and more people are using the models, they will figure out their reliability.
I think they'll have to be more reliable, won't they? As organizations start including them as critical parts of the stack, they will have to become more reliable. Otherwise, organizations won't be able to use them in such a way that big tech is trying to position them.
Another interesting thing is the developer operating model. Have you heard of the Ralph method, Alan?
I haven't. No, I saw a meme about this yesterday where it was that Chris Pratt meme where I don't know what Ralph is, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. And I was like, I completely missed this one.
So there's people who, we were talking earlier about those on the bleeding edge, right? Mm-hmm. There's the bleeding edge. There's the sort of I put myself in the middle, or maybe bleeding's middle. And then there's the laggards who are like, AI coding, what's that? And the bleeding edge currently there's kind of two camps. There's the Ralph camp. So Ralph, for those who don't know, if you start prompting an LLM to build something, you've got to basically for a feature, you go through the feature, then you have to start a new context window, because otherwise the LLM gets confused with previous work it's done and it'll end up giving incorrect results. So Ralph is about basically having a backlog of tasks in an order, and you put Claude in a loop to take a task, do that task, end of the session, get the next loop starts again, start the next task, build that, test it, ship it. Basically, you've got 70 items in a backlog. You sit there, Claude does everything, or the LLM of your choice. It could be any LLM. You go and play golf or tennis or watch TV or what, and come back and your thing is built. Now, I tried this a couple of weeks ago, and the method was coined by Jeffrey Huntley. He's big in the sort of the AI community at the moment. I tried this a couple of weeks ago, and yes, it built the thing. There was one aspect that didn't work correctly, but once I manually fixed that, it worked. So it does work, but it uses a whole heap of tokens and money, and it's basically blindly reprompting every time. That's basically the Ralph method. And the other camp, this guy called Steve Yegi, I think, and he's got this thing called Gas Town. Have you heard of this? No. Gas Town is basically a town from Mad Max. It's the Mad Max movies. It's like everything goes. You can do anything you want. That's why it's called a gas town.
That's the world that we live in.
Basically...
If we live in Gas Town, you can do anything you want. Go and do it.
Gas Town is you have agents, like 20, 30, 40 agents, and they're all working on different parts of the stack, maybe different stacks, and then building the thing. The problem with that is burns it's basically a whole heap of tokens as well. Is it using things efficiently?
Probably not. No.
But is it building the thing?
Yeah,
it probably is building the thing. But that's really, I can't get my head around if that is sustainable going forward. Both methods, I don't feel both methods are sustainable going forward. I think there has to be the other ways.
They're kind of two extremes, aren't they, Matt?
Slower.
Like,
yeah, they are. They're two. Yeah,
and the way I see Gas Town is maybe at global banking. Maybe global banking is an example of where I would see Gas Town in a real life context. Maybe pharmaceutical, that type of development. But it's
solving a problem, like really solving a problem where it might be expensive for humans to think that through. You might have a specific thing you want to get solved.
Yeah, things will drift over time. They have to have oversight.
Yeah. And then for those who haven't used any of these tools, and
it's the way long maturity journey to get to Gas Town.
Yeah, exactly. That's right, exactly. I like oversight. While I don't read every line of code it produces, in general, I know if the gist looks good or bad, right? And it's experience that shows you that. And you can still be productive. I don't need to ship my whole app in an afternoon. I don't, that sort of speed. If it's a small app, maybe. If it's a small throwaway app, perhaps. But if it's something long term, I feel that you still need a bit of oversight over it. And, that's where I'm at. And then you have the other people who still prompt and copy paste, which is what we did actually a year ago. Can you believe it, Alan? The agentic side of coding, it was only a year ago, pretty much.
Wow.
So I guess this is a long way of asking the question. The developer operating model. Do you think that'll change this year? Do you think the methods will be defined this year, or will still be iterating by the end of this year? What do you think?
Yes. I don't know. Never speak in absolutes. So I feel like everything's iteration. Are development operating models ever done? I think there will be different levels of maturity. There's always going to be maturity models, definitely, based on where you are. And especially in tech, they're always changing. Even if we take AI out of the picture in general and take a step back 5 or 6 years ago, when everyone was talking about the cloud, like we're talking about AI, when that all came in and we're having the same exact conversations.
We are, exactly.
Yes.
And it's DevOps, right? A lot of people still don't do DevOps.
Yeah, so
DevOps is.
it's always going to change. Something else cool is going to come out and change everything again. I think there will be a lot of progress on things feeling more stable as far as this goes. But again, I think we're so spread out on the adoption curve right now that it's, how would you quantify that?
I would say most regulated organizations are still going, this going to take them a year to get through the approval to use the model, and they wouldn't have started yet. So would just be my guess. So most of them won't have even started going through that approval.
And the biggest issue with that is that the models are not in every country. We're lucky.
Yes.
The US and EU is kind of like, the US is covered, the EU is covered, but specific countries in the EU,
Patchy.
definitely not.
Yeah.
And other countries around the world. Australia's lucky we have one foundation model available in Australia locally by one provider, which is a bit of a risk there. But I think that's going to change, and it's going to be slow because GPUs are the kind of
This is the same as like
constricting
cloud
factor.
adoption, right? Is if it's not in region, then probably you're going to struggle to use it. I think it's the same with AI. If you don't have the models in your region, it's going to be difficult to use it.
Yeah. And I think the adoption curve is probably wider than it ever has been because there's so many people at all. The main thing that's happened in the last 10 years, while the adoption curve was quite wide 10 years ago, now it's even wider because you still have people who don't do DevOps properly, and then you have people trying to figure out the most efficient use of doing AI to automate everything. Yeah. I think we've covered pretty much everything. Is there anything that we haven't covered that anyone wants to discuss?
Let me check.
This was a really good conversation.
Yeah, I think there'll be more of these sorts of conversations this year. And I'm interested to know how development does change. And a lot of the time lead the way because they want to be more efficient and you can ship things quicker. And that's what drives it. And I think other organizations, like the larger ones, a lot of them don't even know that you can do this. Like, you can vibe code a Space Invaders game. The fact that it's a Space Invaders game doesn't matter. It's just a quick way of, you can one-shot that now. It's simple games like that, simple things. And it's like, still blows people's minds. So
I want to talk about decision ownership and like risk ownership, but not today.
okay,
Yeah.
we can have a show on it. I think we've covered pretty much most of the things. My prediction will definitely be wrong, but I think
We tried.
last year people predicted agents, and that was correct. This year, it'll just be more of the same. I don't know if there'll be any
Agents talking to agents.
Yeah, there might be that, but we'll see. I think we had a good discussion. Thank you, Alan, for joining us. And is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah. Give it a plug, whatever it
Do
is.
you have a newsletter?
Oh, yeah, sure. I do have a newsletter. I've been running it for 4 years now. Ready, Set, Cloud,
that's a long
Picks of the
time.
Week, comes out every Monday.
Oh, that's what's in your background there. Ready,
Yes.
Set, Cloud.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it's not a summary newsletter. It's here's what I found most interesting across tech last week, specifically last week. So I only call out things that were published from Sunday, the prior week, until when it's released. And I talk about what it was about, what the content was about. It could be a blog, could be a video, could be anything. And just give my 2 cents on what that means. ReadySetCloud.io. You'll see it. It's on there.
Awesome.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Georgia. Thanks, listeners.
Thanks, guys.
And please give us feedback at cloud-dialogues.com. Guest ideas, topic ideas, and we read every email that you send us. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.